The following video contains spoilers for Persona 5 Royal. If you do not wish to see or listen to the spoilers, go ahead and watch some other video of mine. This entire video will be solely focused on nothing but spoilers. If you have anything to say about my opinion or the game, leave a comment and I'll most definitely read it and or respond. Do we have an understanding? Seriously, this again.
Hell yeah!
I've been putting off this video for the last month or so. I decided to start working on this video only because of the fact that I recorded about 368 gigabytes worth of footage for Persona 5 Royal, and I realized that maybe it's about time I finally put that shit to good use. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just make this fucking video. Starting off, let's talk about the gameplay changes. Persona 5 Royal forces you to slug through 80 plus hours of basically the exact same content before you get to the really good parts. And I mean, this is the exact same thing they did with Persona 4 Golden, so I'm not really that surprised. Yes, sprinkled in throughout the entire game, there are a ton of changes that absolutely made the game 10 times better, but there were also some really confusing changes. For instance, they changed Merciless mode. In Persona 5, you'd get maybe 5 XP per enemy, and it would take hours to level up. I thought it was kind of challenging, really grindy, but it was very stupid. But it was more of a hard mode, so it made sense. However, in Royal, they changed the experience you gain in Merciless to be double of what you gained beforehand. It was kind of weird to me, like it felt as if picking Merciless was a better option to make the game a little easier. So it wasn't really a hard mode anymore. Although, I mean, yes, the damage you deal and the damage you take was a lot more, so it felt like a lot harder, but it didn't. So what exactly was changed and what was added? Quite a lot, and I think we should go through the list little by little. Right off the bat, you are introduced to a new enemy type, a slagged enemy. Okay, they're actually called disaster shadows. If you kill them, they're guaranteed to explode. So make sure you do a ton of damage, so that way when they do explode, it does even more damage.
Post-edit Mace here just to correct what it is that I'm trying to say with this entire new shadow thing. Basically, the more damage you deal to a disaster shadow, the more damage it'll output whenever it explodes. That's it. There you go.
The way it works is a little interesting and a little weird. It's really neat, and especially if you know their weaknesses, you can easily exploit it. They aren't very common though, so don't expect to get much use out of them. You'll probably run into them maybe 4 out of 10 times. Moving on. The best addition that I should have mentioned first was that your bullets immediately replenish after a fight, and that is so helpful. I don't know, I personally feel like although it makes the game easier, it also made sense for how the metaverse works and how guns work in the metaverse. Baton Pass got a massive upgrade, and now you no longer have to worry about focusing on doing someone's confidant in order to get it. They just immediately get it, which is also super helpful and also makes more sense. On the topic of Baton Pass, you can also upgrade your Baton Passes with people. You get, I believe, 3 ranks to the Baton Pass, and you should absolutely focus on maxing out these ranks, as the amount of damage you can do with it is insane. Baton Pass rank 1 is just normal Baton Pass with a damage boost. Baton Pass rank 2, you deal more damage and recover HP. And Baton Pass rank 3, you deal more damage and recover HP and SP. So having Baton Pass 3 on all 3 of your teammates is kinda disgusting. Another thing that was really overpowered were the will seeds that got added to the game. So in all of the palaces, except for Mementos, which doesn't really count as a palace to be honest, you can find will seeds throughout the palace. Collect all of them and you can create a crystal that can be turned into a ring upon taking it to a new addition to Mementos, Jose. We'll talk more about Jose later. So let's first talk about all of the crystals and the rings and what they do. First up is Kamoshida's Palace and the Crystal/Ring of Lust. As a crystal, it gives you the skill Diorama, whatever. However, as a ring, it gives you an even better ability called Champion's Cup. This skill lets you restore a medium amount of health while also increasing attack for 3 turns, which I will admit I definitely gave to Morgana and had him use on me, which was kind of an overpowered skill for at least the second palace, maybe even the third. Speaking of the second palace gives you a crystal/ring called the Ring of Vanity, which, as a crystal, gives you the skill Brush of Vanity, which is a passive skill that nullifies your weakness. As a ring, it gives you Bleeding Brush of Vanity, and this skill forms a barrier that can absorb one attack unless that attack is almighty. I immediately gave that one to Morgana because that motherfucker dies in a flash. Get it? Because his weakness is elect. Third is Crystal/Ring of Gluttony. In crystal form, it gives you Maruki, I don't know how to pronounce these, which lets you increase your party's defense. It's okay. In ring form, it gives you Vault Guardian, which increases defense for all allies for 3 turns. So kind of the same thing, however the passive effect gives you a barrier that reflects physical and magical attacks. Kinda cool, but I don't think I used it. Ring of Wrath gives you Wings of Wisdom, so you can cure all non-special ailments for all allies, and it gives you automatic Tsukukaja. I tried my best. The ability that increases your agility. Ring of Greed multiplies your next magical attack damage by 2.5, while also giving you the ability to increase someone else's attack. Ring of Envy gives you Gambler's Foresight, which increases agility for all allies for 3 turns. It also gives you automatic Concentrate, which doubles the damage dealt by your next magical attack. I gave that to Joker, and it was a really good idea because I just one-shot most enemies. Next up is the Ring of Gay Pride. It gives you Tyrant's Will, which multiplies one ally's next physical or gun attack by 2.5. Your passive is automatic Rakukaja, increasing your defense. Again, I tried my best. Ring of Sorrow, the most busted, but I preferred to use Ring of Envy. It gives you Guiding Tendril, which allows you to down all foes, but it's only usable during preemptive attack. It also recovers 8% of your HP and SP after victory, which wasn't useful to me because I already had Victory Cry. Yeah, that's all of the rings, and as you can tell, there's a common theme in them, much like palaces themselves. Did you know Shido was gay? I mentioned Jose. Little is known about him because he just kind of shows up, tells you his goal, and after you finish his goal, like, nothing comes of it. He's just like, okay, thanks, bye. Anyways, he exists to turn Mementos into an easier grind fest. You can continually upgrade the amount of XP and money gained from battles by just collecting stamps and giving them to him. You also collect flowers to buy items with, but that's not nearly as useful because you can just break an ATM and get 10 soul foods out of it. Although those are rare to find, so yeah, just buy them from him, I guess. 450! The way flowers work is a little weird because you can collect them, but once you leave Mementos, they go away, kind of giving you more of an incentive to grind for them. Oh, also, let's talk about the way that Jose appears in the game. Unlike the Velvet Room, you can't just find him by going back to the beginning of Mementos. No. You have to constantly go up and down floors in order to get a chance for him to even spawn. It might be a high chance, sure, but imagine my frustration when he would appear and I didn't have any stamps to give him because I was looking for them, and after I found them, I had to wait another 10 minutes of going up and down to actually see his— Okay, that's me being nitpicky and bitchy, but in all honesty, I didn't have a real problem with it. Just an interesting way to handle him. Also, stamps. There are guaranteed stamps and random chance stamps. The guaranteed stamps are ones you can find at the end of every floor, and those are guaranteed, so there's no worry. Except yes, there is, because what about the fact that you want to find all the stamps on the floor in order to max out your XP thing? Well, those are the random chance ones, and it's so rare, and they're always behind breakable walls. So scout out the area and hope to God that Futaba has half a brain to scout it out for you. Useless fuck. I was able to max out my XP thing without going through each and every floor, trying my damnedest to find all the stamps on that floor. And even after maxing out XP, it wasn't worth it. Money, on the other hand, that was a good investment. Grind for 10 minutes, come out with 2 million yen in my pocket. Since we're on the topic of Mementos, we should talk about the Reaper. They decided that cheesing the Reaper was just too easy. So you can't do that anymore. Wanna just get him sick and have him off himself? Well, too bad. Get good and just beat the shit out of him like you always wanted to. Except this time it's so easy. I waited to grind the Reaper because I didn't think it'd be so easy. I made Alice Gutter to be super busted and then took him on and, well, An ended up dying and not getting any XP, so I can't say it was all too easy, but aside from that, it was easy. You still get a ton of XP, and I'm not entirely sure maxing your XP thing with Josei makes a difference. Anyways, if you want a lot of XP, grind the Reaper because he's so easy. You don't have to wait until a certain date anymore, I think. Okay, so we got all of the big changes out of the way. What's next? Oh, the palaces? Oh. I just want to say that the biggest change you're going to see in these palaces is the addition of rooms for the will seeds, and that's mostly it. Not much else has changed except that there are some areas that require you to use your new handy-dandy grappling hook, not your notebook. For bosses, there are some major changes done to some of them, and I think it's important to go over each one of them. For Kamoshida, there's a major change when sending out the wrong person during the distraction phase. It could cost you. Send out An and he'll keep his eye on her because she has such a damn fine bot. Shit, make her send Ryuji or Magana and you'll be fine. There are some other minor changes, but I really don't think they're anything to bring up. Madarame had a major overhaul for his boss. I was a big fan of using Almighty skills, so I instantly got past his original first phase, but he has a second phase. It's a lot different from what it was in the original. 4 versions of Madarame will spawn, each one being a different element. So kind of like how his painting form has different weaknesses to different elements, this is kind of the same thing, except they take on the form of that element and are weak to obviously what most elements are weak to. And I'm really trying my best with wording here. So for example, when you see electricity, it's weak to wind. When you see ice, it's weak to fire. When you see fire, it's weak to ice. You get it. Based on this, you have to find the weaknesses and defeat all of them, or else they'll keep on spawning. All the while, you can also attack Madarame himself. Really, just do attacks that hit all of them and you'll be fine. Next up is Kanashiro's Palace, and this is where you get your first showtime. I didn't mention showtime when talking about gameplay changes, so that I could kind of save it for this. The first one you get is by far my least favorite, and I got so tired of it after the first time I saw it. Listen, I love An, kinda don't really like Morgana, but that showtime sucks. Anyways, changes made to Kanashiro. Based off memory, the only thing I can remember is throwing out something when he's in his rolling form. Beforehand, you could throw out anything he'd think it's worth his while and suck it up. But in this, you have to throw out something that's actually of value for him to stop. So I just ended up not throwing out anything and just blocking because that was way more useful anyways. And I didn't want to throw out another Soma. Oh, he also has bodyguards, but I don't really remember those being anything too annoying worth mentioning because it's just attack all people at once. Wakaba's biggest change was that Futaba now deflects one of her attacks, so I guess that's kind of neat. Get it? Neat as an N. She also has more lines? I don't know. I really didn't care. I really hate Futaba. Let's move on. Okumura had an interesting overhaul, and let me just say, they kind of made it a little harder, and I don't really hate it. Okumura now has a robot Haru and will make the robots attack one of your specific teammates, so you would just end up getting gangbanged by 4 robots, and it was pretty annoying. So I kept upping their agility, and just kept on dodging. Also, if you don't kill all the robots at once, one or all will run away, causing you to have to restart that wave of robots until you kill all of them, which was really annoying, but whatever, I managed. Also, Haru. She would say something along the lines of how there are no flaws in her father's logic, and it would be like some boost allowing him to decrease more stuff for you, such as your attack, which was the worst. Oh yeah, you also end up fighting Robot Haru, and that was really interesting for Haru's character, especially because her dad forces Robot Haru to kill herself for his sake. Pretty messed up. Sai's only change is in her second phase, where she can change her attack through a roulette, and it's kind of BS because she almost always got something that was one of my party members' weaknesses. So I expected her to go on a rampage and destroy my team, but I'm pretty good. Shido got a change where he just instantly downs all of your teammates except for you, and you both have a one-on-one, And I'd say it was kind of nice, but it was more or less a foreshadowing for a better part of the game. And this part of his final form is kind of stupid, but it's easy to just keep using Debilitate and Heat Riser and just use almighty attacks until he finally dies. Tyrant's Judgment, it's kind of stupid, but it really didn't matter because I had the angels on my side. There weren't any changes made to Yaldabaoth, so that's whatever. So, those are all the major changes made to the bosses. Now it's time to talk about the additions. Things added to the game other than Jose that, in my opinion, made it all the more worth it. Because I personally didn't like slugging through the same 100 hours for the 4th time. And I guess that's on me. After defeating Yaldabaoth, you have a whole 3rd semester. Keep in mind it isn't long, it's at least an extra 10 hours worth of content, but it's really worth it in the end. But before we get into that, let's talk about the new characters you get introduced to and a new confidant added to your list. One of the new characters added to the game is Kasumi Yoshizawa. She is an underclassman, a gymnast, and all around a QT 3. You meet her on a train trying to save a seat for an old woman, and then later, after Madarame's palace, when some creep is, well, doing some questionable things that you end up intervening in. She thanks you later on during a cleanup and asks if there's anything she can help you with. This is when you learn her name and your confidant starts. I personally really like her confidant, and she is overall the best girl, despite being an underclassman. Her confidant gets maxed out at rank 5, which upsets me, because even though I knew it wasn't truly maxed out at rank 5, I still felt like that meant I couldn't romance her, and so I ended up romancing someone else, and I felt really bad. I would have 100% romanced her, but don't worry, because I still did. But we'll save that part for later. The second new character / confidant is Dr. Maruki, a teacher / counselor who is brought in to help the students feel like they have someone to talk to after all the horrible things that Kamoshida has done. He's very friendly, which you'll notice makes the conversations you have with him feel less like a therapy session and more of a normal conversation you're having with someone, leading you into talking about your feelings and things you've gone through, which I can say personally is a quality I would like to see in a therapist. He asks you to help him with his research, which you at first might just think is about people's feelings, like you're kind of helping him become a better counselor. I should also mention you're not the only one who pursues Maruki's advice. Although you're not really pursuing his advice, all your party members end up talking to Maruki, telling them about how they feel about their lives and even talking to him about things they'd much rather have happened than the events that have transpired. And this is important to note for later. Akechi is a character we're already accustomed to, so there's not really a need to introduce him. However, he now has a confidant that isn't forced. This time you get to actually hang out with him one-on-one because he's all alone and he needs a friend. I'll be talking differently about this one because this one is different. Akechi, an already developed character, gets a whole lot more development in his confidant. Not just him, but your relationship as well. What goes from a rivalry centered around opposing beliefs and daddy issues as well, becomes a well-developed friendship turned rivalry. Sure, it could be that throughout your confidant, Akechi just seems friendly, trying to make you believe in him just to betray you in the end. But it feels like much more than that. Through your time with Akechi, you learn more about him and his past, and his time spent with you doesn't feel like he's trying to gain information or anything, but more like he's genuinely pursuing a friendship with you. Through billiards and darts, you can see his competitive side and how he's always trying to best you at all costs. All the while, you're improving, and in the end, you get to the better of him. You win at a game of billiards, and that kind of just breaks him, it seems. There's a perfect scene where you two go to a bathhouse to chill out, and he tells you about his family situation. His father, who we know as Shido, left him when he was young and all he had was his mother, a nightclub worker who would occasionally bring a man home for reasons. He would describe his father as a worthless, degenerate excuse for a man, all because he abandoned his mother. He wanted to force him to finally give his mother the apology he owes her. However, his mother had committed suicide when he was young. Throughout his confidant, you start to feel more attached to him, and it truly changed the way I felt personally when you inevitably see him die in Shido's palace. It almost kind of gives him a lot more of a redemption and fleshes out his character. But it doesn't end there because we still have the third semester, which this gets to tie up all the things we didn't get to talk about. If you manage to max out all 3 of the confidants given to you, Maruki, Yoshizawa, and Akechi, you'll be rewarded with the new and improved ending after your fight with the final boss. I'm not saying the name. First off, Akechi isn't dead. He comes out of nowhere when Sai is asking you to turn yourself in and instead turns himself in, stating that if they get their hands on the perpetrator, they won't have any need for you. So, where did Akechi come from? I'll save that for later. I love saying that. After your New Year's party, you wake up in a dream version of Dr. Maruki's room. You get up and leave the room and begin to walk the halls of the school. As you're walking, audio will play from your friends, each one talking about how they would much rather their lives have turned out differently. You hear Ryuji talk about how he would have liked to have gotten some scholarships in order to make life easier on his mom, if it weren't for Kamoshida breaking his leg. On talks about how if Kamoshida had never done the things he had done, she would have been able to enjoy her time in high school with Shiho. She could have lived out the life she wanted to. Makoto talks about how Sai is the only one supporting the family, and this is because her mother had passed away and her father wasn't home often. Because of this, Sai took to raising Makoto alone as she disliked her father. Makoto always regretted disliking her father and wished he had always been there, spending time with him so she was no longer a burden on her older sister. Haru just kinda wishes her dad was still around so that she didn't have to take over Akumura Foods, also because he's her dad. You don't hear anyone else because the only other ones left are ones you should know by now. Morgana wants to be human in order to be with An, and Futaba wishes her mother was still around. Yusuke wishes that Madarame was still around to mentor him. There are a few that we don't see or hear from, but, you'll learn what that is in due time. Upon leaving, a voice asks where you are going and tells you that this is where you belong. When you say that you're going home, the voice also says you still haven't accepted it. And believe it or not, this is something that's very important to keep note of for the ending of this game. And I mean like the after credits ending. You wake up on the 1st of January, a new year. The month feels very different in a massive way. Not only does the little date in the top left look different and cooler, but the whole world feels off, like there's a constant heat wave or something. You get a call from Kasumi asking you to meet up at the shrine you had promised her to meet up at before you went on to take Shido's palace. I meant to say take on Shido's palace. Another thing to take note of is that she states that it will be pretty crowded. Sojiro calls you downstairs, and this is where things really start to change. Some attractive guy wishes you a happy new year like he knows you. You ask who in the world he is, like you've never met him before, and he just responds with confusion. Futaba enters wearing a yukata, and she says how she picked it out with her mom. Joker just kind of stands there confused at this point, but clearly isn't thinking much about it because you got a QT to meet up with. Before leaving, you note that you haven't seen Morgana today, but I'm sure you already know why. Upon meeting up with Cutie. Upon meeting with Kasumi, you notice that the shrine is actually dead. Like nobody's making wishes, but hey, here come your friends. Turns out you all just ran into each other by happenstance. After a bit of chatting, they all talk about how they're too busy to hang out with each other because of things that don't seem right. First of all, Haru is dining with her father, Futaba's hanging out with her mom, Ryuji is hanging out with the track team, and An is hanging out with Shiho. And you're just kind of sitting there completely confused. But it's okay, because I wish to be a ladies' man. I hope that comes true. You meet up with Kasumi's father, and this is where I started to notice something was definitely up with Kasumi. A glitch in the Matrix happens when he says her name, and it cuts out just at Ri. But if you listen back to it, you can clearly hear what he says. Both you and Kasumi are confused, but Kasumi just kind of shrugs it off and goes along with it. You wake up day 2 with human Morgana all up in your face, and you jump out of bed somehow avoiding knocking him off the bed. Joker truly is a badass. I guess I kind of spoiled it, but yeah, that's human Morgana, and you kind of had to have been a brainlet not to know. You go downstairs and eat with Sojiro, Futaba, and Wakaba. Akechi eventually shows up to talk with you. Akechi makes it obvious he knows what's up, and I mean, you know what's up as well. While talking to him, Kasumi calls you and tells you to come to Odaiba because a palace has manifested itself in reality. But let's rewind a bit, shall we? I didn't mention this previously to save it for this moment, but at some point when you're meeting up with Yoshizawa, in her common meeting spot in Odaiba, you end up getting taken into a palace by accident. And this is where Kasumi awakens to her persona. Without knowing who the palace ruler is or why it's there, you have no real reason to pursue the palace. So, after asking Kasumi if she'd like to join the Phantom Thieves and getting swiftly declined, you move on. And that's what leads us to where we have left off. When you show up to Odaiba, you notice that the same palace is there, but this time you're not in the metaverse. And yet you can see it clearly. You, Akechi, and Kasumi enter the palace. You begin to take note as you enter that many things have changed. First of all, there are more people in the palace, and there's now an area that was not accessible beforehand. Before continuing, I want to note that this palace is probably my favorite in terms of design, and the music is absolutely beautiful. Unlike all the other songs, this one doesn't get so annoying despite it being so repetitive. I don't know, something about it is just, I can have it playing for hours and I'll never get tired of it. Continuing onward, you start to get an idea of just what the palace ruler wants. Everyone is happy, but at the cost of them giving up reality and changing fate to be what they wish it to be. It's also worth mentioning the polar opposite of this, Akechi. Yeah, now that he's back to life, he refuses to accept himself as some kind of prince that needs to be coddled. And now he's a completely edgy edgelord that kinda makes me wince, but whatever. I still think he's a good character. He might be a little Reddit. You enter a room and are greeted with a scene of Yoshizawa's father over what appears to be Kasumi's sister with her face covered. This is clearly after her death. After Kasumi talks about how she lost her younger sister, Sumire, she begins to recoil in pain. After this, you see another scene with Kasumi on stage after winning, and she gives a shout out to her sister, Sumire. Something you should notice in this scene is that Kasumi, the one talking, has a beauty mark under her left eye. Kasumi, the one you're with, does not have the same beauty mark. And not just that, but the fact that Kasumi is calling out to the Kasumi you're with, calling her Sumire, kinda, there's a little something. This is when it clicks that you're not with Kasumi, and that you're indeed with Sumire instead. This is also when you finally get to meet the palace ruler. Now, from how he sounded on the intercom, I'm sure you could have pieced together who it was, but whatever, here's the reveal. It's Maruki. Maruki tells you that he is responsible for not only the palace's existence, as he is the ruler, but also that he is responsible for the abnormalities, as Akechi words it. He states that he created this reality for them, and you begin to realize just how distorted his views really are. His ability to create a distorted reality for everyone in the real world could only come from someone so warped. He shows you a cutscene that I can't describe, and I'd rather let this scene play out and describe itself.
Today was brutal, huh? Oh. Feeling okay? It's not that. Why am I doing so bad? I keep messing up my routine. Your growth spurts just changed your eye level. You'll get used to it. Look, you're as tall as I am now. We practice the same amount. But you are the one who always gets first place. I can't catch up to you, Kasumi. You know why? Because it's my right as the elder sister. We're in the same grade, though. Oh, don't be so down. We'll reach the top of the world together. That's our dream, right? You don't get it. Huh? You'll never understand how I feel. What? Kasumi, if I were like you, things would be so much better. Hey, wait up! Kasumi's the one that people want. Look where you're going! The light's red! Hey! The talented one who can reach the top of the world. Sumire, stop! Listen to me! Sumire! Kasumi.
After this, Maruki takes Sumire and you begin to fight him to take her back. Oh yeah, this is where you get probably one of the best show times so far. As Maruki leaves, he tells you that you'll meet up again on the 9th. After this, Akechi tells you that you should definitely meet up with all your friends before pursuing Maruki. After doing so, you ask each one of your friends if this is really the reality they want, if it's truly worth it, telling them to give it some more thought. Each one is interesting, but it's painful. Each of your friends is forced to see that the reality they're living in is one that they created from their desires. A reality they would have hoped for, but never got. It's painful to see how they were able to enjoy life and find happiness, but reality can be a bitch, and they have to give it up because it's not real whether it makes them feel good or not. The 9th rolls around and Akechi and you depart into the palace to take on Maruki. But before you even enter the palace, a scene plays out. All of your friends are meeting up at Café LeBlanc. They begin to talk about how they're truly happy, but they begin to realize that the reality they're in is a false reality. It's Ryuji that ends up making sense of it all. This happiness and this reality is all because you're running away from what the present truly holds. The horrid reality that you have tried so hard to forget. They feel like this life they have wanted all this time would come to an end if they accepted reality, but they accept it's worth it because their friendship is genuine, and with this reality, it only blinds them. With this, their current reality breaks and they are brought back to how things were. Now you're back to Maruki's palace, just you and Akechi. Upon finding Maruki, you find he has taken control of Sumire's persona and has turned her berserk, trying to get her to accept the fake reality that would make her happier. And one of his quotes at the start of the fight is one that shows just what kind of character he is. Fighting was never his thing, but changing reality to shape a happier one without consequences always has been. The fight with Sumire's persona drags out for a bit, feeling impossible to really kill her, a refusal to accept her past and the truth that makes her stronger. But don't give up, because your friends are on the way. I want to mention the ties between Cendrillon and Sumire. Cinderella becoming a princess simply by pretending to be someone she is not, and Sumire trying to get first place as a gymnast by pretending to be her now deceased older sister. However, unlike the story of Cinderella, Sumire could never really reach first place, always getting second and third place, never being able to truly progress as she was always so content with pretending to be someone else. This is a complete contrast to the story of Cinderella, and that trying to be someone you're not doesn't always make for you to become what you want. It takes for you to accept who you are and what you are to truly prosper and become better by being your own person. But hey, that's just a game. After defeating Cendrillon, Sumire is freed from the grasp of Maruki's persona. Afterwards, you take Sumire and leave, planning to come back later and fight Maruki. He gives you the date February 3rd to make up your mind. So if you maxed out all your confidants with your friends, you can hang out with them throughout this time and end up getting a third awakening for the personas. You begin to see what it was that I mentioned earlier, more of how hard it was for them to accept the reality they're living in, but how they feel useless and kind of like they're terrible people for having let themselves be fooled so easily by Maruki. Again, it really begins to show you how harsh reality truly is. There's not much else to say on that, as most themes are kind of the same and you get a sense of it pretty easily. Although now you also get to do more for Sumire's fucking confidant. Throughout her confidant, you begin to see her finally accepting that she isn't Kasumi, that she's indeed Sumire, and that all she needed to do was accept herself in order to get better at being a gymnast. And also, another thing she had needed was someone like you, someone there in the crowd to cheer her on and keep her going. And that's when she admits that she loves you, and it's the cutest shit, and I romanced her, and I felt so bad because I was already in a relationship, but god damn it, I wanted to see her blush, and I got that. And obviously, you can also take this time to do Maruki's palace, and this is the one palace that truly trumps all the other palaces. Within most palaces, there are little sections thrown around to give you more of a hint at the kind of person that palace ruler is. But in this one, there's so much more. Throughout your confidant with Maruki, you never really learn what his reasoning is for asking you for help with his research. The research you find out nearing the end of his confidant is the same that Wakaba was researching. He has been researching cognitive science, and it is revealed by his friend that his research has been stolen, and that he's only continuing to pursue it for his fiancée, which you get more information on throughout his palace. His fiancée's parents were murdered during a home invasion, and she was injured, and this led her to fall into a catatonic state. Constantly being haunted by the events of the past, Maruki unintentionally triggers a mental breakdown in her by mentioning her parents. But before we go further into that, let's talk real quick about a tape you see before all of these ones regarding his past. There's a tape where Sumire is talking to Dr. Maruki about how she wants to become Kasumi, and instead of trying to help her realize how that might not be a great idea, he instead eggs her on and tells her that she should believe in herself. But not in the right way. He tells her that she should change herself in a way that closely mirrors her sister. This is just another one of the many things that helps show exactly who Maruki is. Someone with good intentions but poor executions when going about them. He wants for Sumire to feel happiness, but at the cost of her forgetting who she truly is and pretending to be someone else. That's how he feels she should move on. A better coping mechanism, when in reality, it only served to hurt her. Speaking of Sumire accepting herself, it is apparent throughout the palace that she still doesn't truly, fully believe in herself. However, you start to see her get that grasp on reality and accept her for who she is, soon gaining a better grasp on her persona and no longer clumsily switching out of her metaverse outfit. Back to his fiancée. After she was sent into a catatonic state, Maruki wants to find out a way to make her happier, to save her from the pain she is going through. He sees that the only way of saving her is to erase her memory of her parents being murdered. When he awakens to his persona, he immediately changes her cognition and saves her from all the pain she's been feeling. However, in doing so, she also loses all memory of Maruki, and he accepts the reality immediately, showing how he really only wanted her to be truly happy no matter the cost. He had always been studying cognitive science. His research for it was praised, and he had a really good start. However, due to Shido's grip on everything, his papers were not accepted, and instead, he stole them, and he used it for himself. He used it to help him gain a political advantage over others. All these little things from his research being stolen and his girlfriend losing her memories causes him to break, turning him into the madman he is now, fully awakening to his persona during the Day of Reckoning. You can't fight Maruki before February 3rd, so don't bother. Anyways, on this day, you're visited by Maruki himself. He tells you that it's time to make a decision, and to make it easier, he implies that Akechi is only alive because you want him to be there. Akechi wants to speak with you one-on-one, and this is where you can either decide to decline Maruki's offer of staying in the world he has created for you, or accepting it. Obviously, I picked to decline Maruki because although his intentions are good, this reality is not fair to accept. This is when Akechi's persona gets its third awakening. More importantly, now you get to fight Maruki. First of all, the fucking song that plays is... it's so good. It's sublime. Out of all the boss fights up to this point, this is one of my absolute favorites. The music is phenomenal, and the fight is it's amazing. I'm just gonna let some of it play out for you. After finishing his first form, he takes on his second form, This one being slightly more of a challenge than the last, just because it will prevent you from using certain things for at least one turn, such as no magical attack skills, no physical skills, no healing skills, no items, and no cure abilities. Eventually you will get a hang of it and finally defeat him. Or you finally defeat Azathoth, bringing out his treasure, a torch. Akechi states that this could be his perception of himself, a torch that is used to guide others in dark times, viewing himself as the guide for the world in these dark times. You get it. After escaping the palace, you find out that Maruki is not at all defeated. Not yet, at least. Taking back his torch and taking on his new persona, Adam Katamon, he just won't give up. He feels as if he was chosen by the world to rule it and bring it to a better reality. You and your team refuse to let it end, clashing the refusal to accept reality for what it is with those who have ultimately accepted it and are no longer willing to let themselves be manipulated. Eventually, you will defeat him, because stronger and your personas, I really made them busted. And now for the ultimate battle. His refusal to give up and his belief that he is the light that will guide the way keep him getting stronger and stronger no matter what you do. It doesn't do enough damage. In fact, it does little to no damage. Until he takes his attacking position when you can finally deal damage to him. His focus on attacking gives you enough time to target his head and end it, once and for all. All your friends get together to deflect his powerful attack and hold it back while you go off on your own to take on Maruki and stop this once and for all. Honestly, this scene is so fucking good that it's better for you to just watch it.
His head is his weak spot. Though our attacks are ineffective in his normal state. But whenever he attacks, he drops his guard while concentrating all of his power. So if we can target his head as he strikes, we might have a shot.
Don't underestimate our tenacity!
It's just another threat. We'll overcome it like we always do. If I run now, I know I'll regret it. We'll decide for ourselves what we want our lives to be.
I'm a bit occupied, so do your goddamn job!
Oracle, how does it look? Perfect. His head's defense level has dropped down to 0%. Go for it. Finish this, Joker!
Checkmate.
I love that their will is much stronger than that of Maruki's, giving them the ability to win against his distorted reality. I'm using that word so much. A way better ending than that of Shido or Yaldabaoth. You feel bad for Maruki throughout all of this. He's just a good guy with such a distorted view of how to win. All he wants is to help out those in need, no matter what the cost. To make them happy without pain, something anyone would want. Throughout the fights, he has dialogue with your party members about how they shouldn't hold back their desires. But each one denies his want, his needs, and they accept the reality no matter how hard it is. and they're willing to become better people through the hardships they've endured. Persona 5 teaches you the harshness of reality, the fact that people with power can use it to tear you down and abuse it to no end. But with this ending, it shows you how hard it can be to accept that reality, and how no matter what you might have gone through, you have to find a way to take that pain you feel to make yourself stronger. That accepting is a step in the right direction to moving on and getting to that point of being stronger. Maruki fails to understand this, wishing for a life without pain, for happiness to just be a thing that you don't have to work towards. And although his intentions are good, they're distorted way out of proportions from what life is like. However, the game doesn't end there. Joker decides to take Maruki on one-on-one, and much like everything else up to this point, this is better for you just to watch. This part is where Maruki finally decides to accept it all, accept his reality, his fate. He accepts that he is running away from his regrets, and only you can help him with it, as you and him are kind of one and the same. Only you can accept what he can't. After all of this, it is revealed that in their reality, Joker turned himself in, much like in the original ending, and again, you still have that part where everyone is trying their best to get him back from prison. I don't want to talk about this part, because I really don't want to start up a theory around it, even if I really want to. But after the credits, you're given a little cutscene, and you see someone dressed like Akechi. I'm pretty sure it is Akechi, but I have written so much and I don't want to bother making a fucking ending where I go nutso and try to figure out how he's still alive. Maybe in another video. 10 out of 10. Good ending.
That was truly cringeworthy.